Hi again. Thanks for joining me. Well, we're here at the second part to the first chapter of Time Stealers Timekeepers Chronicles. And I'm hoping you're enjoying it. Um, I actually did the prologue, the blurb, the prologue, in the whole first chapter all together. Well, I decided to do the second part afresh. And hoping I can make it a better listening experience for you. So here we are, and I'm going to read a little bit before the new material. Bring you up to a little bit up to speed where we are in the story. And it's just going to be a few paragraphs before. So if you watched the previous one, the chapter 1, part 1, just give you, you're going to hear a little bit of a kind of a lapping over of the material. So, here we are. Grant studied her further, trying to see hidden motives. He sensed her actual request was still unspoken, but he felt that she may not be aware of what she was seeking. Was this request to help her grandfather the actual reason, or was she drawn to his shop to start her apprenticeship? He pursed his lips as he thought of the fact that there had never been a female keeper in recorded history. He put that thought aside as he sat back and crossed his arms over his chest and waited. After a few minutes, Charlotte looked at Grant, then back down at the table. That is the situation. My brother is hounding grandfather, increasing his misery in his last days. What can be done? What can a time wraiths do? She cried as she hit the table in frustration. Grant's attention was drawn to the curtained doorway. He was sure he had heard an echo to the impact of Charlotte's fist on the table coming from the showroom. As he watched, a black, wispy shadow flowed through. After the entire form assembled, a being with spindly arms and legs, skeletal torso, and long flowing hair could be seen. Sitting with her back to the doorway, Charlotte hadn't seen the shadowy form. Grant gestured to catch Charlotte's eye and signaled her to be quiet, stared at him with fright, but looked as if she was going to turn around. Grant slowly shook his head and signaled her to breathe in and breathe out deeply to calm herself. Charlotte had to try several times before she could breathe smoothly. She could see she wanted to turn around to see what was behind her. Grant kept his eyes on the wraith. She had hesitated in the doorway as if she was waiting until Charlotte was ready. Grant nodded at the shadowy figure in encouragement. Mentally, he sent her assurances that she could approach them. In his thoughts, he asked her why she had woken while her clockwork was still running. The wraith floated over to the side of the table and hovered as she signaled into his thoughts that she had been called to the woman at the table. The images she transmitted to Grant were rapid and confusing. He shook his head slightly, indicating he couldn't understand. His attention was drawn back to Charlotte when he noted that she was gripping the sides of the table as if her life depended on it. Grant could tell she had seen the wraith in her peripheral vision. She was struggling to continue to breathe calmly. Her eyes were stretched wide with fear as tears of terror filled them. "She will not harm you," Grant said slowly and soothingly. "She awoke in response to you." Grant reached across the table to pat her hand. It was ice cold. "Why?" She spoke, her lips stiff, teeth chattering. "I cannot understand the images she is sending me," Grant said, shaking his head. "Typically they are so abstract in their thoughts that it can be hard to interpret their communications. But this is even worse. I can't begin to make sense of what she is trying to tell me." "They talk in pictures?" Charlotte was trying to concentrate on something other than the presence of the shadowy being beside her. That is the best way to describe it, Grant confirmed soothingly. As he was watching the wraith was studying Charlotte. He watched as the being lifted a shadowy arm to reach for the woman, but did not touch her. Charlotte saw the movement in the corner of her eye and tensed even tighter. Is she touching me? She sounded close to total panic. No, Grant was mystified by the encounter. He had never seen a wraith act like this toward anyone. She won't, because that will cause the time loss effect. Does she know what I need when I'm not sure? Grant couldn't answer. He watched the shadowy being undulate as she faded in and out of sight. By the time she stopped, she had become so wispy she almost disappeared. Suddenly the figure turned her face toward him and nodded. Grant nodded back as he mentally asked the wraith what was happening. He thought he could see a smile on the vague, shadowy face right before she disappeared. She never explained her actions or what she was going to do. Grant felt a shiver go up his spine. He wasn't sure what was going to happen, nor was he sure that he or any of the other timekeepers were going to like it. What is she going to do? Charlotte asked in a small voice when she noted that the shadowy being had disappeared. She let go of the table to run shaking fingers through her hair. Grant drummed the table lightly as he thought about what he had just witnessed. I don't know, he said finally. I really don't know. How long have you worked with these beings? She asked. Her voice steadied as her fear dissipated into curiosity. A very long time, he said quietly. He was deep in thought, trying to dredge up anything similar in all his dealings with the wraiths. And you can't predict what she is going to do? Usually we can predict in general terms what is going to happen in specific situations. That is because of years of experience and noting patterns in their behaviors. He stopped drumming to look at Charlotte, meeting her gaze. This is behavior I have not seen. He stood up to go back out to the showroom. I need to contact the others. What do I do? Charlotte asked as she stood to follow him. Grant stopped after he drew the curtain aside and looked back at her. Other than that, you go home and wait. I don't know. Will I be safe? She asked, hugging herself closely. They have been around you for a long time and have not hurt you, Grant said quietly. They will not start now. Are you sure? After all, you just said they are acting differently, she pointed out. Only one is acting differently, he corrected. She appeared to be very concerned for you. She awoke to help you. He paused for a moment to think of a way to describe how it seemed to him. Similar to a sleeping mother hearing her baby cry in the dead of night. Charlotte stared at him in momentary shock. I am not that thing's baby, she reacted furiously, her brow knitting in offense to the implication. Grant shook his head and reached toward her as he tried to calm her outburst. I know that, he said soothingly. I was trying to form an image of how the wraith's action struck me. Oh, she answered as she ducked her head, embarrassed by her reaction. Belatedly, she realized what he had tried to describe. Go home, Grant said. I will contact you. You are staying with your grandfather? For now, she said as she rubbed her arms nervously. His clocks are occupied, aren't they? Grant shrugged. The ones he got for me were not at the time they were purchased. He moved through the doorway, but there is nothing to keep wraiths from moving into one. She nodded as she followed him out of the room into the showroom. She studied the clocks on the wall labeled not for sale. Only one of the cases was slightly open. Grant also stopped to study the clocks, noting that all were still active and that the other wraiths were quiet. He still pondered why that particular wraith had woken. He let Charlotte out of the front door, relocking it behind her. He knew she was scared, but didn't think she was in danger. He didn't feel comfortable having her tag along when he needed to contact the others. He walked to the back of the store, past the break room they had just been in. Bending down, he pulled on a handle to lift a trapdoor hidden under a throw rug. Stepping down the iron spiral staircase, he descended into the basement. Reaching the bottom, he flipped the switch, illuminating the cavernous space with halogen lights. Before moving through the room, he stopped a moment to study the clockwork mechanisms covering the wall nearest him. Once satisfied there were no problems and the time chain was moving smoothly, he walked the length of the basement. As he made his way to the other side of the large room, he checked each of the clocks in the vast collection stored there. He made sure they were all active and the wraiths rested quietly whenever he was down in the basement. He nodded to himself, satisfied that everyone else was acting normally. Opening the door at the end of the basement, he stepped into a room completely lined with gears of all sizes that were meshed together into an active time chain. The slow, rhythmic tick-tock of multiple escapements soothed his worried thoughts, easing the tension from his nerves. Sitting at the small desk in the center of the room, he acted his laptop. As soon as it booted up, he connected to the internet and activated video conferencing. He scanned the server and poked several of the keepers that were already there. He asked them to contact whoever else they could to join them. He leaned back in his chair and waited. Within half an hour, 100 of his colleagues from around the world had joined him. When he was sure no others could join him due to time differences, he started the impromptu meeting. I've called this meeting to gain information and to inform you all of an event that happened this evening. What is it, Grant? A heavily German accented voice sounded bored and bothered. Well, Odo, Grant started, knowing he had to take care of this keeper before anyone else could speak. I witnessed a wraith acting unusually. Humph, Odo snorted. What do you expect? And they are called time vampires. Grant sighed and rolled his eyes. I am not spending another century arguing about their names. Vampires fit. They steal time from people like other vampires steal blood. Odo was warming up to his subject. Look, Odo, Grant stated firmly. It's a worn-out term. Drop it. There are more important things to discuss. Well, Odo started, then was drowned out by the others. In the cacophony of voices, Grant could pick out the frustrations of the others with Odo that mirrored his own. Order, order! A British voice silenced them all. Grant, proceed. Thank you, Piers. Grant took a deep breath. I had a wraith awaken and emerge while the clockworks were still active. Has anyone ever seen that? The forum was absolutely quiet for a few minutes. Then a slew of questions jammed the speakers. He couldn't make out the individual questions. Order, order! Piers Holmes' cultured British voice again quieted the din. Once everyone had stopped, he continued. I would take it that no one ever has seen the like, he said, in precisely clipped words. From what I could gather, there are questions as to what led up to this event and what happened afterward. It didn't take long for Grant to describe the situation with Charlotte, since he left out much detail. He told the group what he felt they needed to know at this point. He was surprised and appreciative of everyone's quiet until he was done. When he had told Charlotte that they were a closely knit group, he was being generous. They could be downright surly at times and barely civil. He was surprised so many had logged into the conversation in such a short time frame and that many were staying on. Pierre's voice broke in as soon as Grant indicated that he had finished his report. Many of you have comments or questions about this event. Please ask in order and with decorum. It's simple, Piers Holmes, you British prig. Odo was the first to speak. Grant, you have a rogue. He paused and said sadly, You will need to destroy her. Grant could hear a collective gasp across the forum that echoed his own. Destroying a wraith was unheard of. Even the most evil ones were kept in prison, not destroyed. They simply did not know what would happen if one was destroyed. Grant jumped in before anyone else could. Odo, you know that is not done, he stated firmly, and I will not. He paused for effect, then continued. I simply wanted to know if anyone had witnessed this kind of behavior and if they determined a cause. Each of the present members replied in negative. No one had ever witnessed such behavior in all the centuries they had known these beings. Grant sighed heavily. I thank everyone for his time. Piers replied, Grant, keep us apprised of this situation. It sounds like there is more to come. We will watch those in our keep and let you know if we observe something similar. Everyone but Odo affirmed the Brit's words. It's just a rogue, Odo grumbled. You will see that is of no concern. I truly hope you are right, Grant replied, and signed off. Grant lingered in the clockwork room to allow the movement's slow rhythm to seep into his being to clear his thoughts. Before he knew it, he fell asleep, lying across the keyboard. A buzzing sound woke him up. His back ached and had a crick in his neck from lying across the table. He felt his face and confirmed there were imprints of the keys of the keyboard embedded in his skin. He found his cell phone and answered it to stop the irritating buzz. This is Grant, he said, his voice rough with sleep. That's what I thought, a male voice greeted him. Fell asleep in the clockworks room. Grant stretched to realign his protesting body. The most relaxing place for me. A laugh followed his reply. As for us all, the voice continued. But you know, you should limit your time there. A little is good, a lot could be a problem. Okay, John, Grant grimaced. I don't need a lecture. I was just very tired and concerned about what my wraith is up to. Is she back yet? John asked quietly. I need to check. Grant stood up and made his way out of the clockworks room and through the rest of the basement until he reached the stairs. Is your vault working well? John asked. Grant glanced at the wall of clockwork mechanisms, noting that they were all working as they should. Seems to be secure. Good, John said. Do you like the solar backup for the power? Haven't had to use it yet, Grant said as he climbed the stairs. The geothermal power produces more than enough energy to power the vault wind-up. Good idea from Sven over in Iceland, John conversed. I would sure hate to have to wind those huge springs by hand. Definitely, he agreed. I am glad we were able to figure out how to do it far enough away to not cause problems with the wraiths. He had arrived in the showroom. He paused as he studied his not-for-sale wall. Looks like she's still out there, he sighed into the phone. The clock's still running. Still is. Her leaving didn't disturb it, Grant noted. Weird, John muttered, then asked, What about this woman? Do you think she is a true keeper? Grant sat down behind the counter to look out the store's glass door. The sun wasn't up yet. He laughed to himself since he looked at the clocks but didn't notice the time. I don't know. She had seen them but didn't know what she was seeing or what they did. I didn't have a chance to test her on how far she could sense them. Things got weird real fast. I can imagine, John reassured. You know, if she is a full keeper, it would be the first for us. I know, said John quietly. I don't know what to think of that. Problem with the gender? John teased. No, I like the gender just fine. The keepers have always been males. Not that I ever thought about it before, but it's just the way things have been. I know, John said quietly. That is why I wanted to contact you without the others eavesdropping. I have a sense that all this is very significant, especially the way the wraith reacted to her. Where is she now? I don't know. Grant looked up at the empty wall clock. She never went back into her clock. John chuckled. No, man, I meant the woman. He laughed some more than sobered. Your wraith must really have you rattled. Grant sat down on the stool behind the counter and rubbed his face wearily. I am very tired and very concerned about all this. He glanced out the front door again. I sent her home. Are there clockworks there? Yes, but she has been around them without any trouble. I didn't feel like she would be in danger. John was quiet for a moment. Just when Grant thought the call had been dropped, he spoke again very quietly. Maybe her knowing more has changed things. An ice pick of fear stabbed Grant's heart. He hadn't considered that. I will go over there right now, he said as he stood up and grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair. Take a wraith with you, John suggested. If he will come, Grant hesitated. He turned to his not-for-sale wall and studied the clocks. Since these wraiths had been with him for a long time, he knew their basic personalities. He decided to take the one in the Ansonia Baghdad wall clock. Reaching up, he opened the door and stopped the pendulum. Waiting a few minutes, he saw the smoke-like figure uncoil from around the clockworks to glide out and hover in front of him. Grant concentrated on the shifting, vaporous figure as he mentally formed images he hoped the wraith could understand. He revealed the events of earlier and what he wanted to do. The wraith looked up at the Becker wall clock as if to confirm Grant's story. Grant thought he saw a fleeting look of concern over the smoky face. More strangeness in a world he thought had grown dull and predictable. The wraith nodded as he drifted near the front door. He's going with me. Let me call you later, John, Grant reported to his friend. Okay, I will be waiting, John replied before he disconnected. So, that's the end of Chapter 1 in the Time Stealers, Timekeepers Chronicles, Book 1. There are 2 more books in the series so far, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope hearing this, if you've read this story, maybe you enjoyed hearing it being read. If you haven't read the story, I hope that maybe it's got you a little curious about what's going on here and what's to come. So please like, share, and comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know what else you would like for me to add to content on this YouTube channel. I appreciate you watching. Thanks again for joining me. You all have a great day.